department at Politics and Prose. Thank you for coming to join us and tuning into this virtual format where we continue to bring authors and new books to you. I have the pleasure of hosting this evening's session, and I'm absolutely delighted as we welcome our guest authors, Najem and Nora Neus, and our guest illustrator, Julie Robine, to tell us about their new graphic memoir, Najem, War Reporter. Before we get started, we have some housekeeping notes. Please note that closed captioning is available for today's program. Just click the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen and select Enable Transcript. You can click the link we'll drop in the chat to get your own copy of Najem, War Reporter. Lastly, if you have a question for our authors and illustrator, you can click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and add one there. At the end of the presentation, they'll have some time to answer some of your questions. You can also upvote the questions you like and want answered. Now, on to the event you're waiting for. Najem is an internationally recognized journalist from eastern Ghouta, Syria. He began his reporting career as a child under near constant bombardment by the Assad regime by taking videos on his cell phone and posting them on social media. His story went viral in 2018, essentially putting a target on his and his family's backs. And in 2019, he and his family fled Syria and moved to Turkey. Nora Neus is an Emmy-nominated producer and journalist working for CNN. She's reported from inside a maximum security prison, from 14,000 feet above sea level in San Juan Mountains, and from rural Puerto Rico after devastating earthquakes. She's currently working as anchor producer to John Berman, covering the conflict in Ukraine, American politics, and the ongoing COVID pandemic. Nora helped break Mohammed's story and helped bring his family's plight to an international audience. Julie Robine is an illustrator and designer based in Brooklyn. Since graduating from RISD in 2015, she's worked as a freelance illustrator on a variety of projects, including the picture book, The Day the Kids Took Over. A middle child, she's been drawing since realizing was the only thing she's better at than her sisters. Now let's get started talking about your memorable new book. Mohammed and Nora, I was hoping you could begin with a short overview of the book to start.
Sure, I can kind of start and I'll let you jump in, Mohammed, when you want to. The story is Mohammed and his family's story of growing up in Syria before the war, when Mohammed was just a kid, and then going through this traumatic experience of becoming a teenager and coming into the world during wartime. And Mohammed started taking videos on his cell phone, selfie videos, reporting on the conflict in Syria, which is when I found his videos. We wrote an article, did a video for CNN about it, and he went viral. But that virality put a target on his back and meant that the Assad regime and the Russian government came after him. The Russian government supporting the Syrian government, of course. And that is where his story really took off. And he is now in Istanbul and is safe, which is very relieving.
Thank you, Nora. Let's say it started like the story of the book, kind of talking about the lives that I struggled to live. And I think thanks, Nora, for trying to tell the world the things that I lived in Eastern Ghouta. It was hard, so we tried to put all this, what's happened with me in this book, and kind of explaining to the world how a child and the rebel that get out and share his story to the world. So all the information in the book is kind of telling the world that your children can do things in this world too.
Thank you. So this question is kind of for everybody. Can you tell us briefly about your roles in putting this book together and working on it?
Nora, go ahead.
Sure. So I am, as you mentioned, the reporter that broke the story about Muhammad back in 2018. I firmly believe he would have gone viral all by himself without me. Someone else would have discovered his videos, but it happened to be me. And I am one of the co-writers on the book with Muhammad.
Thank you. Julia, do you have an opinion?
Well, I'm the illustrator. I was brought in once the manuscript was basically finished. And I collaborated very closely with Nora and Muhammad's family to make sure that the book reflected what they wanted it to and felt true to his story. And yeah, we all worked together to bring it about. It was an amazing experience. Muhammad, Fred.
What I can say is that it started by an idea from Nora. So I wasn't believing it till I see the book in my hands. So it was great, and I learned a great lesson that when you believed in an idea in your mind, you can achieve it in real life. So thank you, Nora, for this lesson.
Of course. Muhammad and I have talked about this recently, that he didn't totally believe it was really going to happen when I first started working on it, and we pitched it and we sold it. And we only kind of came to that realization recently that he was kind of humoring me for the first while, even though I tried to explain what was happening.
Yeah, Nora kind of telling me on Twitter. So I was like, a normal idea, it's not going to be real. Till I find Nora in Istanbul, joining me in my house and having dinner with us. And we start talking about it. And till that moment, I wasn't believe. But we really continue doing it. And it's become real now. It's unbelievable.
So that's great. Another question about putting together as a book. Why did you decide that you wanted to write a book for younger readers, and why specifically a graphic novel? This is definitely a story that, everyone needs to hear. What made you feel that it should be for kids?
Mm-hmm. Can I start?
Yeah, go for it. I know you feel passionately about this.
Yes. Well, actually, as I lived in Istanbul, I was, when the war started, I was 8 years old. So it was kind of hard for me. And I used to live a normal life. But when the war started, everything changed in my life. In city, everything destroyed around me. So I really lost hope. I wasn't believe that I'm gonna be 20 now, or I'm gonna be alive. So I lived all this. So when we decide to make it for young reader, it's kind of giving him hope that continue your life. I see most of children losing hope because of what's our world reached to. But in our world, there's a lot of fantastic things we can do. And especially that I chose the young reader, maybe that we can help them and increase them to do better thing in this world, and we can save our world.
That's really lovely. And is there a specific reason you all wanted it to be a graphic novel?
The graphic novel felt really natural of a choice because this was exactly how Muhammad was always communicating his story and his truth about what was happening in Syria. It was always through image. It was through his videos and his pictures. And so the graphic novel format felt like it lended itself to his story very well. And then there's a little piece of it too that I always just thought Muhammad was kind of like a superhero. And so I liked giving him his own graphic novel. He hates that I said that.
Well, actually, a novel, it will be it's not boring. So
it's not like that. It's not boring. Yeah.
Kind of.
Well, you're right, though. It really does grab you having read it. So I know that, Muhammad, will you share a little bit of background about your life in Syria and sort of the moment that made you realize you wanted to start documenting it for other people?
Mm-hmm. My life began to change, as I said, after the war happened in my country. The thing that's like I wasn't able to go to school normally because my school has destroyed completely, and like being in the war, it's really hard for children. So wasn't able to deal in our life normally, and like my father have a store carpenter. He work as a carpenter, and like we was having a normal life, quiet life. I was like before the war going to school, have dreams. I really want to be a football player. I really want to be like in the childhood. I was want to be a football player and beat Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. I was like have a like children idea. But anyway, like uh in the war, everything changed. I lost this kind of dreams. Everything turned like into hell. Like bombing everywhere, everything destroyed. Like even my family, we wasn't able to live in the same house because my house destroyed because of bomb. And we displaced in Eastern Ghouta. So I lost a lot of people in my life. My father died in 2015. After 2 years, like my father used to work in a company that's help people. So after 2 years, at 2017, like I look at myself, my father loved to help people. So I love this too. Like I'm I'm sure that if I did something that's helped people, he maybe would be proud of me. And I was seeing my brother doing his job. He's a journalist. So he's doing his job. So I get a little bit jealous of him. I was really want to do as him as he do. So I learned from him. Then I got the idea of like it's not be like working. I have a job, but it's kind of fun, like adventure for me. So I can report children and do some videos, like some funny videos for my friends, for the children. Like that would be fun for me. So I wouldn't have a phone till my brother finally bought me a phone, and it was a small phone, but I was appreciated. And my sister was used to work as a teacher, English teacher. So she helped me through doing my videos. And I think this job, helping people, I'm sure if my father's still alive, he will be proud of me.
Thank you. So, so I want to pivot a little from Mohammed to Nora. Will you tell us more about how you learned about Mohammed's activism and how your relationship with him began and then grew?
Sure. I was working at CNN at the time. I still work there now. And I really just stumbled across one of Mohammed's videos. And it was the scene that now is actually the cover of the book. But that was the very first video that I saw of Mohammed when he was standing on a rooftop with bombs in the background. And he was showing this view of the conflict in Syria that was hard for us within Western media to gain ourselves, because it was hard to get reporters into some of those areas of rebel held Syria. And I almost forgot that it was a kid that I was watching until his voice kind of broke a little bit in this video. And that was the thing that I think really drew me in, that here's a kid who is scared and doing it anyway. He's frightened, but he is still reporting to show the world what is happening in his community. And so I watched a lot of his other videos. We started talking through Twitter DM and then through WhatsApp. And we had to do some work to verify that he was real, that he was who he said he was really in the community he said he was. But then we wrote this article and I edited together this video on my laptop in my spare time. This wasn't my day job at the time, but the story went live and it went viral overnight. We had millions of views. It was translated into Arabic and reshared all over the world. And that was really where his story took off.
Wow. Speaking of that, is there any chance, is the book only going to be in English, or do you guys know if it's going to be in other languages as well?
Right now it's in English, but we're really excited about the potential for it to be translated. And we do have a couple of folks that we know that don't speak English, but who have been able to read it, including one of Muhammad's brothers, because of all of the pictures. So that's been really cool as well.
That is. So, so that's how the two of you worked together. And now the three of you have worked together. Can you tell me a bit about the collaboration of putting together the book? How did it work?
Yeah, so Muhammad and I wrote the book together initially, and a lot of the first step of that was extensive conversations between me and Muhammad, but also the other members of his family. And so, as he alluded to, I went to Istanbul and got to meet him and meet his family. A lot of the trust building of the process, I think, really happened there. There are a lot of stories from that trip that maybe I won't share all of them. But there was a lot of tea, there was a lot of hanging out late into the night with his older brother and sister, and who are about my age. And we just had a really great trip. And I think that was really the foundation for a lot of the work of the book. And then from there, I would basically write a chapter. I would talk to Muhammad, and then interestingly, I would ask his older brother and sister to tell me the same story of the same event, but from their perspective. And that's where a lot of the interfamily dynamics kind of came out that are really present in the book, where there's kind of different views of how exactly something happened. The story of the parrot was a big one that everyone had kind of different stories about how that happened. That is in the beginning of the book. And then Muhammad and his brother and sister would review the draft, make changes, make suggestions. And then we sold the book, and that's where Julie came into play.
Yeah, I was approached in September 2020 for the project. My agent, the incredible Tanya McKinnon, gave me a call, and we'd been talking a little bit about, what kinds of books I would be maybe interested in illustrating and doing. And we'd had this long conversations about how I was like really interested in doing like fantasy and sci-fi and like dragons and witches and stuff. She calls me and she goes, "So I have none of that. However, I have this project that is going to make you very nervous, but that I think you need to hear about anyways." She was right on both counts, where I was sent this brief of the article that Nora wrote, all of Muhammad's videos, and sort of like a summary of what the book was about, of Muhammad's story. And I spent the next 3-4 hours just like wildly Googling everything I could about Muhammad, watching all of his videos, going through his entire Instagram, and just kind of getting a sense for what I was possibly going to be a part of. And I was very nervous. It's very easy for somebody who is from an outside culture to kind of totally wreck doing a project like this. I was really nervous about depicting anything in a way that was disrespectful or exploitative or belittling in any ways, reducing the story to just like a tragedy or a story of victimhood, as opposed to how like all the wonderful, incredible facets of who Muhammad is and what his story is and what his family story is. And so I had a long talk with my agent and with the editor. I submitted some samples. I was given 2 pages of the manuscript to submit a sample from, and my artwork was given to Nora and Muhammad, along with a couple of other artists. And ultimately I was chosen. I panicked again and had another call where we sort of laid the groundwork of what I needed in order to make sure that this was depicted the way that it needed to be. And that included making sure that we talked on a regular basis and that Muhammad and his family be involved in every step of the process. So I did character sketches and I sent them over just to make sure that, everything looked the way it was supposed to, and that people were happy with the way I drew their clothes and the way that I just drew their faces, things like that. And then I was also very generously given this wealth of photos and more videos and access to your guys' phone numbers whenever I had a question. Like, I remember texting in a panic when I was coloring some stuff, what color was your parrot? Because I didn't know, and getting some answers immediately, being like, oh, it's gray. Here's like a picture that you don't have. And then if I could get any kind of like rough understanding of the floor plan of their first apartment, things like that, so that it felt as true to the experience as it could, and that it felt reflective of what they lived. So we started with that in mind, and once I got the manuscript, I started doing a ton of character sketches just to really get used to drawing all the characters and making sure they all looked like themselves. Lots of more Instagram stalking and trying to get like references for their clothing and how their hair grew and all of that. Kind of a vague idea of like maybe what their favorite colors were, so that those came up in the clothing and in other little hints. And then I did the sketches in batches. Those were sent in batches to Little Brown, but then also to Nora, Mohammed, and his family. And then after that, the inks came in, and then on the color, for which I did some samples for our incredible colorist, Shin, who just took over and did the best job ever. Yeah, the book just came together in the most wonderfully collaborative way. As somebody who's worked both as a freelancer and as a designer with publishing, it's very rare to have this much collaboration between authors and illustrators. And I am incredibly lucky to have been a part of something like this. Extremely grateful.
So that description was so vivid, but I know that you also have pictures to share with us.
Yes.
And I was hoping you would share with us to show us what it'll look like.
Yes, I can do that. So I have a PDF of some of those things that I will share now. Okay. So the picture at the top is the first ever sort of full family portraits that I did year by year of sort of like the big years for the story. And the bottom ones is kind of how it all ended up looking. It's funny because there's some repetition with like what people are wearing, but the style has evolved into something that feels a little bit more real and a little bit less childlike, I suppose. But it was like very good practice just to kind of get used to obviously making sure that everybody looked the way they needed to, but also just getting really familiar with everyone, which is so nuts because Mohammed and I have never met in person, but I spent the last like 2 years drawing you basically every day. And I feel like if and when we do get to meet, I'm gonna be so weirded out that like you're a real person. But yeah, so I just did this a lot just to kind of get used to all this. And then I also created character charts and color charts for every character, almost like a game designer. So I had these little keys with sort of the basic color palettes for everybody. Here we have all of Mohammed's siblings. I really enjoyed drawing the kiddos. Patul and Karam were really fun to draw because they're so small throughout the entire book. And then I also did, oh yeah, as you can see, Mohammed had the most wardrobe changes of all the characters, which was really fun as well to do. And here are some of the cover concepts that I also created. So we definitely wanted to make sure that, the way that Mohammed was filming everything was through his phone. So the phone was an important part of the concept. And they ended up going for the one cover that doesn't feature the phone, which is the middle one in the bottom row. The idea with this one was just that basically the viewer was seeing the screen itself as opposed to seeing the phone the way that one would when watching a video that Mohammed does. So we went with this, but then we reworked it a little bit to what it is today. So including the phone so that the concept is just a lot clearer, and then making the background just more detailed. The background actually is kind of a funny story. Where the first time I drew it, it was much more tame, kind of going back to this sort of making sure it was truthful, but not wanting it to feel, over the top or kind of like an American's take on what's going on over there, which is definitely not what I wanted. And I sent it to everyone, and Mohammed and his brother came back to me and they're like, it needs to be more. You need to do more. And so I did, and then I did more and more, and then eventually got to where we are now. And I think you're happy with it. You're happy with it. But it was cool. And then we actually behind the scenes, Karina and Andrea, the editor and the art director, and I talked a lot about the sky for this. We really weren't sure what kind of sky to do. And so I did a whole bunch of different ones, including like a nighttime and then like dawn, and then one that was much more red and orangey. But then the blue actually is so true to so many of the videos. Like the weather is beautiful, but everything else has been devastated. And so we wanted to show that contrast as well, that like life still goes on, and, the world remains in some ways the same, and in everywhere else just completely different. And then this is the sketch to ink to color process for one page. So the sketch page really is 2 stages, but this is just one that I'm showing because I do really, really rough compositions to kind of get an understanding of how I'm going to lay everything out, since I'm given essentially a screenplay where it's like this page will have this panel, this panel, this panel, but I get to decide how I lay everything out. And I really like breaking panels. So I'll do things like this where something will just not be contained within a panel. And then once those roughs are done, I'll sketch over them a little bit loosely, but a little bit tighter still. Then those are approved, maybe with some minor changes. And then after that, we move on to color. And in this case, this is one of the sample pages that I did for Shin. And she used that as sort of like her base for a lot of, for the rest of the book. And it was seamless, frankly. You cannot tell the difference. She's incredible. And yeah, that was kind of the process for me. After that, we sent it off for printing. I got proofs and making sure that all the colors were right and that there weren't any like little mistakes, anything like that. And then it was off to the printer for real.
I just wanna say a comment. Like, not because you are the one who wrote who drew the picture, but you are very talented. I really
Thank you so much, Mohammed.
So that's fabulous. So I'm going to move on to some questions that have come from outside. And please, to the people watching, if you have questions, please put them in our Q&A. So this first question is something actually we somewhat addressed. Kristen was wondering, where can we see some of Mohammed's video footage? She'd love to see some of his original reporting after reading the amazing book.
Well, yes, it's on my social media. It's under the name of Mohammed Najem. You can follow me and see everything.
And a good probably first video, if you haven't seen any, is that link that's in the chat with the original CNN article, which has the video on top as kind of a montage of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'll be glad to have you in between my followers. You are all family.
That's perfect. Thank you. And so between Mohammed's social media and in our chat is that very first one. So someone else was asking, so Amy was asking, are there any plans or hopes to get the books into schools or school libraries?
There are, and they already have made it into quite a few. We were selected as a Junior Library Guild Gold Standard book, which is a huge honor and means that it will be put into school libraries and into schools across the country. And so that's been something that we're really honored by. So definitely. And I think that's one of the ideas of the book too, is that it really is a way of teaching the Syrian conflict to kids.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sort of, if we can open a window into something that a lot of kids might not be familiar with or might have a sort of limited vision of or understanding of, that would be really wonderful.
So Ian wanted to know if there were any stories that you left out of the book, even though you really, really wanted to put them in, and then why?
That's the question. Well, there's a lot of stories hidden. It's not written in the book of the conflict or maybe family problems or like problems happened to me in Eastern Ghouta. So it's hidden from the book. Of course, I will not share it.
Some of your family stuff. I think they're also probably the biggest thing that we didn't put in the book was Muhammad's experience with chemical warfare and chemical weapons. That's something that we chose not to put in the book for a variety of reasons, partially because it is such an enormous topic and such a huge thing that happened that it was like almost it deserved its own separate book, and it felt like it was too much to put in this one narrative. And then also just explaining chemical weapons to 8 to 11-year-old readers is a feat. And the book is pretty horrific enough without that experience.
Reason. So Wendy wanted to know more about the recipe in the back of the book.
So I wonder if that is my incredible agent, Wendy Gu, who was also a huge part of this process. And without her, this book really wouldn't exist. The recipe is for stuffed grape leaves, and it is Muhammad's older sister Hiba's family recipe and your mom's family recipe. And it happened very organically because in so many of the moments in the book, it came up. It just kept coming up as that's what they were eating. And I got to taste some of it in Istanbul when I came to visit. And Muhammad, you love the abrak, don't you?
So much. I wish I can eat it from your hand once I win.
I don't know if you want to eat the ones I make. It's hard to make.
It's actually, but I can do it, so you can too.
Okay, we'll do it together next time I visit.
Absolutely, we can share Juliet.
Yes, please.
Yeah. If the follower also, like the viewer, want to share us, why not? We can make a big party and make a party together.
So our next question is a more kind of basic question, which is, Muhammad, what kind of phone, what version did you use to film the bombings?
And I'm not remembering the name, but this was the first version of Samsung. So it's kind of old one. It was a little bit small, and now it's costs $1, maybe less. So it was the worst camera ever in the world, but I was able to do a lot of things.
So thank you. Julie, besides talking to Muhammad's family, did you need to do any additional research for the clothing, the setting, things like that?
Oh yeah, sure. I did I used Google a lot. I did some archival research as well to make sure that, before the war, showing all like the livelihood and the richness and the beauty of the country. And then, I watched a bunch of other footage from news networks, trying to get my hands on as much sort of culture as I could. And just rounding up as many references as possible. I also love Pinterest for not necessarily for like realistic depictions of anything, but in terms of color schemes and pose references, things like that. That also definitely came a long way when I was actually getting into the details of everything. But yeah, it was a mix of very close-knit talking and collaborating with the team, and then sort of making sure that on my own as well, I was going through resources as much as I could and compiling information and then using that for my work.
So, did you each have a favorite scene or story that you got to have in this book that you really are so excited made it in?
I loved the parrot. I heard that story and I instantly wanted to put it in there, and I wasn't quite sure how it was going to fit, but I was glad that we got that in there. And it ended up, and it comes back later in the book and actually formed kind of an important emotional beat later, but it started off as just a funny story.
Maybe the most stories I loved is it's on the cover of the book. Well, I'd say something. This video, when I made it, there's a lot of language mistakes. All right, I made it, and into the video there was a bomb fall on the building behind me, and I stopped, and then I record another one, a correct one. So you all know that my English was really the worst English ever I was. It was bad. So I did another video with the correct English. Then I came home and I showed it to my sister, and I told her that it can be published, like, because it's really like it will be great if I share it. That's when I'm even recording the video, bombs fall out behind me. So she said it cannot, but you can use it. Like, you have English, like, for the worst English, so it's all right. Like, it's just a video. So because of that, I love this story, and it's become on the cover of the book.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
This is God's secret, but now.
More of a generalization, I guess, but there are so many scenes of the family being so tender together. The brothers hugging, and there's no shying away from emotion. And I found that it was great to draw, just from like a lot of how I draw is very much driven by emotions. I'm told that I tend to make the faces that the people that I draw are also making. So like, oh, it's just like a mirror almost. And so just getting to draw a lot of like just really loving dynamics was really lovely. And I think added a lot of depth to how I was drawing everything, is having these moments where you see the unity in the community and just all the love that's there. That was really awesome.
It's cool to hear you say that you make the faces of the people that you're drawing while you do it. I do that with writing, and I didn't know that anyone else did that, but my sister used to call me out on it when I was little, and I would tell bedtime stories because I would like close my eyes but then like be making the faces, and I do that now when I write. So that's funny that you do that too.
Yeah, it's completely subconscious, but I can't help it at all.
So Karen is wondering, Mohammed, what did your family think of the book?
Well, like, they were like me and believed that we will have a book in the family. Like, it's like, we wasn't even think about it, but now they are proud of me. Like, they become love me more. And like, I did achieve in a family, and it will be a book for the family, for the history. Like, I'm glad actually that I did something useful in the family.
You can brag about this forever now.
Like, like, my brother used to work as a journalist, and I learned from him. So now I'm making book, like, he looking at me, come on, you were a child, and now you have a book, and I worked for 10 years, and what did I get? Nothing.
Yeah, you worked for free all that time.
Yeah. So it's a great thing.
Well, now you're a big time author.
Yes, I will be like this.
So Norman said that as a trauma therapist, he wanted to say how wonderful he thought the work was. Mm-hmm. And he was wondering, how has writing this story helped with the emotions that result from everything that came? before? Has it helped you process what's been going on in your lives?
Well, actually, kind of, you can say that when I read the book recently, I finished the book. But the thing is, when I'm reading, I really like remember that the scenes that's happened, and then start memorize the moments when I leave these actions. So it's really, I felt like I'm not the one who in the book, so I felt touched. And well, yes, but I already lived this scene, so I will not feel the same emotion as the other would feel. And especially, I want to ask Julia, like you are drawing the picture, did you feel like this, like you were living the moment?
There were definitely instances where I sort of would like step back and like take a break and just sort of, I mean, it's obviously comes nowhere close to having lived it, but it was, it's emotional sort of putting yourself in a headspace where you feel like you can actually depict something that is emotionally resonant and doesn't feel removed from the moment itself. So in that sense, there were definitely scenes where I kind of had to like take a deep breath before knowing what I was about to draw. But I listened to a lot of like very intense music for those as well. But yeah, a lot of it was also, I was with rewatching all of your videos and kind of paying attention to how you were reacting to the things that were happening as you were filming them. That was really helpful too, because not just like being locked in like my own brain and like how I was perceiving what was being written and how to depict it, but genuinely seeing like you in like the action of everything. Kind of, there's that human connection of just being like, this is scary, this is terrifying, this is horrible, and sort of using that and harvesting it to try and put that on the page as best as I could. And I hope that comes through.
So, so the question next is, Mohammed, how does it feel to have your book out in the world and being read by children and teens?
Well, that's unbelievable. Like, I'm great that's like I have something in this world. Like, maybe it's good step for me. That's as I'm, it's not helping my people. Maybe the children who are gonna read this book also will gonna get some experience of it. So it's gonna be helping them, and I will be satisfied by that. Like, I'm not just help my people, I also helping the people who will gonna read this. Maybe will they retain the hope for them. That's and life, in this life, there's a lot of things that you're gonna be like, you have to be satisfied for it. You have to be thankful for it. Like, you have your body, you have brain. That's all you need. You can do everything.
So all of the rest of the questions tend to boil down to this one question, which is, what is next? You all have been doing such interesting things, and this was so compelling. And we all want to know what you're working on that we can enjoy what's coming up.
Nora, answer first.
Okay. Well, I am still working at CNN, and I spent some time this year at the beginning of the war in Ukraine, and that was this really serious experience. But the thing that really brought it full circle was I called Mohammed before I left and said, I need some advice about being a war reporter. And Mohammed was able to give me some advice. Book-wise, I have another book coming out in a few years with Julie. And so Julie and I are working on another project together that's also very collaborative. It's a young adult graphic novel, historical fiction set in 1888 New York City, following one of the first undercover female journalists in the country. And so we have been working on that a lot together. Julie is sketching now, so that's the phase we're at on that project.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm working on. It's been awesome. I got the manuscript about a month ago now, and I'm trucking along. It's been really fun. That's been really, yeah, it's fun to get back into it. Graphic novels are very intense to do. I grew up reading them, so I think like by osmosis, I've just like absorbed a lot of sort of like the ways to lay them out. And it's been really cool doing that. And then as far as my day job goes as a designer for children's books, it's still a really fun balance to have. You know, I get to both draw for my freelancing things, but as a designer, I also get to talk to artists. I get to help artists bring forward projects that they're really excited about and nurture their careers as well. So that's a really cool way to also be a creative person who loves books and publishing and drawing that way. So that's been going on, and who knows what's next? We will see.
Mohammed, are you a kid next? What's going on?
No, well, I hope for Julia and Nora all the best in their books, and I'll be the first one who will book the book. I'll be glad to read it. Maybe the next for me, I have a long way to go for, and I have a plan. Let's say like it's a dream, which is I want to be a big journalist, international war journalist, reporter. Like from the experiences I get from my city in Syria, I think a lot of people need help. And I will not stop just for my people. There's a lot of people also, maybe I can help them. So I will let my dream to be a football player aside, and I'm gonna be an international war reporter, going all through the world to show the suffering of the people. I really want to make sure that I'm gonna do something to change our world. I'm going in this path, and I'll be glad if anyone can like help me in this. Like there's a lot of people believing that we can do something in this world to change our world, and I believe in this too. So I want to be a maybe famous journalist, because when you be famous, you can do a lot of things, and people are gonna listen to you. So I'm gonna achieve this with other things. I'm also trying to be multiple, like talented, like to write another book, and I hope doing a lot of things. Like, you know, I'm still 20. I can do a lot of things in the future. As Julia said, I don't know what's next, but absolutely will be great things.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us and for your wonderful questions. And thank you again to Mohammed Najem, Nora Neus, and Julie Robine for today's really fabulous presentation. We learned so much. And Mohammed, it's the middle of the night by you, and you did it in a different language. We so appreciate it. Don't forget, you can still click in the chat box to get your copy of Mohammed Najem, War Reporter. We have many copies waiting for you. As an independent bookstore, we appreciate your support. You can also find the original link to the first story that Nora put together about Mohammed in the chat. Be sure to check our website for updating social event listings, and you can always follow our Children and Teens Department on social media under @KidsInProse. Thank you all again for joining us.